There we go. There we go. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Huddle on Tuesdays, where Tara and I are going to talk with Paul Zohov today, and we're very excited about it. We are going to talk about, well, the question is, could starting every sentence with yes and transform our relationships and our communication? And Tara and I are all about anything that can transform relationships and communication, because that's why we're here. So Tara, introduce us to Paul Zohov.
That's right. Thank you so much, Catherine Paul. We are delighted that you are here. You could not be a better fit for the Daily Huddle on Tuesdays, where we talk everything communication and relationships. And we do that because we believe that more effective communication builds better families, better business, better communities, and a better life. And so you are here to help us with our mission, and we could not be more delighted. I do want to share with everyone that Paul this morning, it's only 7 a.m. where he is. He's coming to us from Tucson, Arizona. And Paul holds a master's degree from the University of Virginia in counseling. He spent over 20 years of his career as a chaplain and also as a domestic violence counselor. And today, he is very devoted to being a counselor of marriage and communication, and he puts his strategies to practice every day with his beloved wife of over 25 years, Rita. So we are so happy to have you here. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm only one person, and I seek to expand my influence, and here's an opportunity.
I love that. We've had some counselors on before, and you can only take so many folks in a week, right? And this is an opportunity to share your wealth of experience and knowledge with the world. So let's dig into the question. You actually shared with me when we did some of our preparation, 2 different strategies that we want to talk about. But the first one I want to dig into, you seem most passionate about, and it's about the words yes and. And I am particularly excited for you to share this because that's an old sales tactic. And so that doesn't feel very good when we're talking about marriage and relationships, but you put a whole new spin on it for me. So share with our audience why you're so passionate about the 2 words, yes and.
Well, it's amazing the impact yes and has on the quality of our communication. There's 4 major benefits when you say yes and. In fact, I encourage people to begin their sentences with yes and routinely. Why? Because yes helps us go from reacting to responding. Most people tend to react. Remember the word tends to, by the way. And so you say something, I say something to you, and you react. You say something to me, and I tend to react. And reacting doesn't require intelligence. It's certainly good when the light turns red. It has its place. You want to stop. You don't want to think about it. If you think about it, you may wind up in the middle of the intersection. So yes, reaction has its role. However, in human relationships, it does not. We are obliged to pause, reflect, and choose. And so on the first level, yes keeps our hands on the steering wheel. No matter what someone says to us, however dramatically or irately or happily or sadly, you say yes, and you have charge of the next moment. Yes establishes a connection. Yes helps us stop the reaction mode. Yes means I heard you, which is really important because people often don't feel heard. So if you say yes, means I received your communication. Not necessarily do I agree with it, but I received it. So you've gone from reacting to responding. You have established a connection, and they know that you've heard them. And the and provides us with a moment to pause and reflect and choose what direction we want our conversation to go. Yes, and let's talk about that. Yes, and when's a good time for us to speak? Yes, and. So with just 2 letters, we got four gifts. There's actually a 5th
question about that, Paul, because I've had that experience, but where it's felt a little disingenuous. like where somebody's been like, well, yes, and, actually, and so it kind of actually turns a different direction. How do you coach people into
Yeah.
answering so that it really lands for somebody that they receive that?
First, once they understood they've been heard, that's half the battle.
Hmm.
And if they yes, you can really stretch it out to give you time to think, right?
Gotcha. Hmm.
Yes, maybe we should take this to a coffee meeting. So yes, and opens up the door to communication.
Gotcha. Okay, great.
Um, the other
So
piece,
you said that yes doesn't necessarily mean you agree.
right? Like if you have your child, your child could say, "You said yes." No, no, I just yes. Yes means I heard you, and it's time for us to talk. You know. And if you have teenagers, some of us have had teenagers, instead of reacting to our teenagers, becoming gatekeepers or other parental things, when they say, I want this really expensive thing, and you say, yes, I'm listening, just like that.
Okay, I
And
like
feel
that.
heard, honored, and respected. And you get the information you need to appropriately respond to the request, because what they're requesting might not be what they're looking for. It might be their relationships, it might be their stress and their struggles and how they're feeling. If you react to them, you don't get the information you need to be a parent. Yes, also is a great way to deal with people's anger.
Hmm.
Someone comes to you angrily, intent on being angry, and you could defend yourself, you could explain, which only feeds their anger, by the way. You say, yes. They go, huh? Well, I'm really angry here. Yes. You know, after about three yeses, they get kind of the engine stutters. And you may be able, not guaranteed, to get a word in edgewise. It's hard to you don't have to be in the rabbit hole longer than it takes to say yes.
Hmm. It
It-
sounds like to me that part of this must be that you're truly, genuinely listening to the person, that you're not just waiting for them to stop talking and then you just automatically go to yes and.
well, that's a nice segue to another point. We want to avoid the word you. As children, we learned you sit down, eat your dinner, you clean your room, you do your homework, you apologize to your sister, you turn off the TV. And the problem is the legacy of that is when we tend to hear you, the amount of listening available shrinks
Hmm.
because they start to defend themselves or rationalize themselves or justify themselves. And listen, if I speak youishly to you, the chances are I've lost about half of your listening. If it's a hot button issue, I've lost all your listening. And then I'm listening to answer you, not listening to you.
Okay.
So really,
And did you call that youishly?
youishly.
I like that.
And so the strategy there is to avoid the word you and replace it with the phrase one of us. One of us tends to. So one of us is a pretty easy substitute for the word you, and it keeps our listening bubble healthy. We want to use when we want to avoid the words always, every, never, and only. Why? Because that'll turn off their listening because they're going to figure out, is it valid? That's always, every, never, and only. And for that, we use the word tends to.
Hmm.
One of us tends to. After that, you have a good shot at communication. And
You
with
know,
the yes and yes, go
it,
ahead.
it would be really wonderful for our listeners if you could, because these are amazing strategies. Let's put them to practice though. And what I mean by that is share some experiences that you've had either in your life or with your clients that have taken these strategies and what it did for their relationships.
Well, people walk in the door with very poor access to communication. The very first thing at the very first session, which about always usually about 2 hours long, is have them get used to yes ands. Uh, they're slight direction. There are four things that mess up a relationship. Communication skills. Our schools teach us how to know, they don't teach us how to be.
Mm.
Yeah. Two is that they have a poor relationship to their love languages, citing the book The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And he distinguishes that people have five love languages, but the order in which they arise can be very different. I like quality time. I like to be appreciated. My spouse experiences love when I help her change the sheets. Because I get to show love, she gets to experience love, and I know that acts of service is her main love language. She's a teacher, instructor, principal, member of the board, so she lives to serve.
So Catherine and I are very familiar with the five love languages, but some of our listeners may not be. So could you give a little summary of what those five are and how they empower communication and relationships?
Well, given that once you read the first 9 chapters of the book, which please get a hold of The Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, you'll distinguish that you may have been loving them in your best love language because it works for you. However, it may not be synchronous with theirs. And therein lies a lot of problems, including infidelity, by the way, can often be found in this neighborhood. Gary Chapman wrote The Five Love Languages and a whole bunch of other books since then, distinguished that there are 5 love languages: the gifts, quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, and physical touch. And then you'll take a quiz at the5lovelanguages.com, and you'll find out your love languages from most to least. And the mischief there is amazing. For example, an example of one of my couples, 40 years ago, I mean, I see people have been married as long as 50 years or more, but 40 years ago, they got together and he prepared a special meal for them. She didn't acknowledge it, and she didn't apologize when he realized that she didn't acknowledge it. So for the next 40 years, he doesn't cook. It's really remarkable.
40 years he didn't cook. Is that
He
what you said?
didn't cook because she
40
didn't acknowledge,
years.
she did words of affirmation. She didn't appreciate his efforts. And when she realized it was a breakdown, she didn't know how to apologize either. And so she became resigned and took on the role of cook for the next 40 years. And when we understood what was going on, we just eased into him cooking. Well, let him help you cook, prepare a meal. We did that. Then eventually he prepared a meal on his own, which, by the way, is quality time when you do things together. So something that had afflicted them for 40 years because of a miscommunication at the roots of the relationship, problem solved. They now cook together.
So I want to ask you a question about words of affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you believe that some people, not only is that not their love language, but they have a hard time receiving words of affirmation? Why are some people made that way?
Well, in my own relationship, words of affirmation is probably my first or second love language, but it's about my spouse Rita's fourth.
Mm-hmm.
So it was confusing for a while. I would say, I love you. I tell her I love you most every day, many times a week. And she goes, fine. Not exactly like that, but it was kind of like, it didn't light her up because it's not her love language.
Okay.
And now that she knows that words of affirmation are my major love language, she knows to say, thanks for making the coffee. Thanks for, cleaning up the kitchen before I come out in the morning. And so we have also mythical brownie. So the brownie has been here. I know that I'm the brownie. So I feel appreciated. And she's learned to appreciate me because she knows that love language is mine. And since acts of service is hers, whenever I open a mayonnaise jar, run Norton Utilities on her computer, refinance the house, dealing with the banks and things, she was thrilled just to show up when the notary public did. She just did not want to deal with it. Nor did I, to tell the truth, but I took that on as an act of service. So once you know, anything you take off your partner's plate leaves them feeling connected and loved. One other piece I'd like to put in is that people tend to speak declaratively. I'm doing it now, as if everything coming out of my mouth is the truth. When that happens, we get to be responsible for it. Anyone who's listening, that includes you, automatically goes, good, bad, right, wrong, or agree or disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And if what I say to you doesn't match what you believe, intend, and remember, we'll argue about whose truth is truer, whose reality is most real, and who's right and who's wrong. So communication stops, listening stops. And for that, we need the word seems. Seems to me we avoid talking about. Yes, and it seems to me we've never agreed about. Yes, and it seems that we bring up the past routinely. So when we use seems, we bypass the automatic truth app that operates beneath the surface. It helps us do a bypass. A yes and seems will get you a discussion where truth will leave us vulnerable to argue about whose truth is truer, whose reality is real, most right and most wrong. So between yes and seems, we have we have access to communication. One of my dreams is that a 16-year-olds, when they learn this in high school someday, they feel obligated to say yes when they really mean no. Because they want to be popular, they want to be accepted, they want to be in love, their bodies are militating for pregnancies. And so in the same moment, their best friend comes up with an idea, likely unsafe. And then would it be nice if your 16-year-old could say, yes, let's find something else to do.
Yeah.
Yes maintains the relationship and allows them to steer safely. Yes, let's look at that together. Yes, I'm not sure this is a good idea for me. Yes,
Okay.
I'm not in the mood. So the yes maintains a connection, which they want so much, and the and lets them steer. Between yes, ands, and seems, you maintain control of the steering wheel of your life.
So let's talk about that for just a minute, Paul. As a matter of fact, I wrote this down because in the email you sent to me, you said exactly this, that your hands never, when you're using this yes and communication, that your hands never leave the steering wheel of our lives. And then you wrote, at the source of what's next, our access to being. Tell us about that. What did you mean by that?
Well, life has no language. Something happens, and then we talk about it. Trees don't fall, rain doesn't, birds don't sing, and waves don't crash. Fall, sing, and they're all words that we made up in order to describe or embrace our experience. Language
Okay.
is a peculiarly human thing. Now, this is very, very useful because now we know that if we're talking like we are right now, and the interpretation mechanism is running all the time. What does this mean? What do I make this mean? Then we can switch our interpretations to get a brand new life. Once we distinguish, which we'll do in about the fourth session of the people come to work with me, they realize that, at 5, 10 years old, they figured it out. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me, which is a conclusion a young person might arrive, and it's still running beneath the surface of their marriages today. So we distinguish that which has been running beneath the surface of the relation. I'm not good enough, or people cheat, or, I'm about to be abandoned. These are all true stories, by the way. And we change it to like, I'm loving and caring, accepted and acknowledged. If you live a loving, caring, accepting, and acknowledged life, you're replacing that with the old, I'm not good enough, I'm about to be cheated on life changes. Our interpretations give us the tools, the levers and dials of our next moment.
So you just wrapped off a lot of fears that many of us, I think, grapple with. Do you help couples who maybe are not really aware of those fears?
I
Like they're
guarantee they're not
communicating
aware.
as a result of them, but they're not really aware that that's what they're afraid of?
These are the things that run beneath the surface of our lives. When I was 5.5 years old, I figured it out. No one cares what I want.
5.5?
I was five. My mother walked me to PS 89 in Elmhurst, Queens. I spent 2 months in the kindergarten in the Bronx. We moved to Queens, Jackson Heights, and I'm in a brand new neighborhood. And she walks me to a brand new school 2 months after the school year has started. So far, so good. My mother's walking me to school. Aha, quality time. I sit down in the auditorium of PS 89. I still remember the fold down.
Terrible name, PS 89, but go
They all
ahead.
have numbers. They don't know names. Maybe
Public
today.
school number 89.
Right. Exactly. And so I can imagine the plywood seat that you fall down to sit in an auditorium. This is the 1950s. And then she walked out of the room. I have a vivid image that she's leaving the back of the room, and I'm stuck. And my interpretation of the moment, given the last 2 years since my sister was born, no one cares what I want. And I retreated into myself because I'm also an introvert. That helps. And I wrote off my sister, my family. I disappeared into books and TV watching. And What did my sister's first word in the world was my name. And I pushed her away. And I pushed her away. And I fought for the side of the car that I sat on. I fought for the who controls the TV programming until 7:30 in the evening. And so basically I had a world given by no one cares. It's hard to give me a gift for Rita in the years past that if she knew what I wanted, she would go get it because she's acts of service. But I wouldn't tell her to the point she said, well, get yourself something you like and that'll be a birthday gift. So I had to become aware of how pervasive no one cares is. I couldn't write the book, you know, without if no one cares, why bother? Why bother writing the book? No one cares. So my life was tainted with no one cares what I want. At least not too far in the past. I've transformed this, but if one person came and she became accustomed to being abandoned, and she's 51 years old, and so it's hard to make a relationship with someone who expects to be abandoned. That's the
Right.
interpretation. That's her as a child. She learned, I expect to be abandoned, you know. And so she walks into relationships with one foot out the door and a backpack, just in case. One last anecdote. Turns out that his parents cheated on each other. Her parents cheated on each other. Her brother is cheating on her sister-in-law as we speak. And so for her, cheating is just a matter of time. They were married 13 years, but he walks on eggshells around her because he never knows what will set her off. Because if he looks at a server for 2 seconds too long, boom. So these people, that was present on the moment you married them. Not good enough. Marries, I have to be aware of the emotional needs of people around me. And then they said, I do. And then they don't for the next 15 years. It's really quite remarkable how
So
much
is part of what
communication costs us.
is part of what you do for couples is to help them to understand why they have the tendencies that they do? Is that the
Yes.
step towards changing them?
Well, the homework for the first session is read the first 9 chapters of the 5 love languages, write down the results, and discuss what you've discovered. I also give them access. Go to 16personalities.com, which is a version of the Myers-Briggs personality type.
Mhm.
And they will understand that someone who is analytical, that's how they approach the world first. Analyze, figure it out, which is me, by the way, on a lower level. But some people process the world through their emotions first. So a thinker, letter T, think about Sheldon in Big Bang Theory, or Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. They are just don't prioritize their own feelings. It's all cognitive, intellectual, and logical. And they may tend to argue their feeler spouses. You shouldn't feel that way. I may have said it wrong. I apologize, but why are you being so upset? Because to a thinker, it makes no sense.
Right.
So if a thinker does that, then the feeler thinks, you don't care about me or my feelings. And if you watch HGTV, or Love It or List It, the couples express all thoughts and feelings for the purchase of where they're going to buy their house next, maybe South Carolina. Um, and when all thoughts and feelings are honored and expressed, their choice is 100% buy-in. And that's part of the job of the program. 3 places, 3 locations, and then Richard Bronstad says, "Which one is yours?" And they go, "We want that one."
Mhm.
And it makes complete sense because they've had all thoughts and all feelings honored and expressed.
I
So
watched that show and I've never thought about it like that, but you're right. I just thought it was sort of fabricated, but it's a great point.
it's if you hear something like, "Oh, let's do it, but I'm not sure I like it," you know that something's wrong.
Yeah.
Or let's do that, but I'm sure we're missing something. That's the thinker. So we want 100% buy-in. Otherwise, the outcome is distorted. Um, yes, ands and seems. That's the name of the curriculum I propose for high schools. But
Right.
if our teenagers know yes, and seems, they're safer and the relationships grow. Um, One more. I know we have time for another point. A quick one.
Another point, and then I want to talk a little bit about your book and see if Maria wants to chime in before we run out of time. So go ahead.
As you might notice, language is decisive. And if you listen closely, you'll hear a lot of I have to, I ought to, I should, and I must. I have to go to work. We need to go shopping. I have to get ready to get going. And if you hear that and you listen a little closer, you're hearing or else. I have to, or else. I should, or else. We need to, or else. And that way you can understand that your life is given by obligations and circumstances, and you are not the driver. You are everything you do because I have to go to work. I need to go shopping. We have to get going. So that's a life of a passenger, not a life of a driver. And yet, when you flip an O for an E, you get to a get to life. Just a vowel switch. In a get to life, you are a choice. You have opportunity. You have possibility. And you can change your mind just because you want to, because there's nowhere else. So I coach parents, especially get to parents, raise get to children who get to be get to adults in their own time. Because life is a get to. It's a very different life than a life is a have to.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll stop that. Go ahead.
I love that. It sounds like conditioning to me in a very positive way. So,
Well, children are basically optimists to start off with.
Gio calls it hypnotizing. I called it conditioning. So yeah, but it makes sense. If you grow
Life
up,
is life is exciting. Life is
yeah,
exciting to a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old.
yeah,
I get to get up, play with my toys, have breakfast, go visit grandma. And if parents speak speak get to language, they're more likely to get a yes out of their child.
absolutely, absolutely. Well,
So
I want to hear if Maria wants to chime in since she is a dear friend of yours, and then we do want to hear about your book before we run out of time. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning. Thank you for giving me a moment. And thank you for having Paul on so the whole world can get the message about great communication and communication that works. And Paul, I acknowledge you for your work in the world so that people have access to being connected, to great communication, to workability, so that they can live an exotic, erotic, fun-loving, adventurous life. And I find people don't know how. And with your recipes in your book, it'll give them access. So really, thank you. And the universe thanks you for that.
the next step is to bring it into the world of work. Because if you bring your marriage to work, your performance is influenced. If the managers can't communicate with each other or if they're employees, it's a train wreck. So the next step of
Tell the folks how you put all these strategies into a book, because I think it's pretty clever.
The book is structured as recipes, not chapters.
Right.
Not to be read from front to back. Pick the recipe that appeals to you, read that, get the guidance you need.
And what is the name of the book? Let me put it in the
Marriage and Communication, Recipes for Life.
Okay.
And the recipe could be all 1 sentence long. To avoid always, ever, never, and only, use the word tends to. And then there's discussion after that for those of us who want to know how and why. So, but most people just want to know how. They want a cake. They don't want to understand baking.
So. Right. I assume this is on Amazon.
Amazon, yes. Marriage and Communication, Recipes for Life. You'll see a nice, happy couple.
All right. It looks like Sorrel and Giovanni both put their hands up. They have a tendency to do that right at 9:29.
I can literally, I could tie us up for hours.
Mine's really short, Tara. Mine's really short. I want to acknowledge the gift that Paul, that you are, Paul, and also want to acknowledge the gift that Maria Sangria is, because she's the one who insisted, Sorrel, you've got to get Paul Zohar on the Daily Huddle. So I didn't want the half hour to go by without acknowledging the circular gift and my profound gratitude for your presence and my profound gratitude for your generosity, Maria. Thank you.
Thank you, Sorrel.
Thanks, Sorrel.
Hearing that.
Gio.
Well, I was going to say the same thing, and since I get to say something else, then Paul, thank you for being here. I want to kidnap you for another hour. I can't wait to read your book.
Anytime.
Yeah, and then create a course with Paul saving lives together. I don't know, but you're fascinating, Paul. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's people come to me because they have to. They come back because they get to.
Ah, yes, I love that. That's fantastic.
And then I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I've helped people in many places in the world just make the time zones work.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. I hope that we'll be able to share this episode out because I know it's going to help a lot of people. I do want to take a few minutes to thank you and close out with our tenets. And the first of those is love, to keep love in your heart and communicate with love. And also to remember to be generous, to give of yourself, of your vulnerability, of your time, of your resources. And don't take yourself too seriously. Throw your head back and laugh, letting those endorphins fly and giving you great energy, which will help to reduce your stress. And also, it's important to get your sleep, to eat mostly plants, and to get up out of that chair and move that body. We thank you for being here, Paul. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you,
Paul. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here.
See you next time.
You find me on the net.